So it's 2 minutes before we start, so I encourage the audience to sit closer. I believe there's some kind of still COVID issues, right, that are preventing us to sit closer together. But yeah, really just joking, just take the place you're comfortable with. And this is also always my issue, that I'm too much taller than the microphone. So yeah, do I need to speak that close? If I speak like this, is it? Okay, excellent, good. So I think with maybe a few people still about to come, we'll start on time. And I've been kind of struggling for some time to come up with a narrative of this. And I figured out that I need to define the goals and objectives first. What a surprise. And so the current version of the slides is basically parsing two goals. First, it's logical, should be logical and internally consistent. Second, it is something that probably most of the parties involved could listen to without immediately jumping to the mic and shouting, "This is not true, what you're saying." There would certainly be some shouting involved, but presumably at a later date. And that was my goal. I'm speaking as an individual. The slides are not a reflection of my personal position, and my personal position, which I believe the Right Programming Committee is well aware of, is out of scope of this Birds of Feather session. With this, let's get started. And I'm starting with some numbers, and this is the dynamics of the aggregate number of LRRs in the RIPE region, updated as of 23rd of October 2022. Today, the total number of LRRs in the region is 23,704. This is the distribution of LRRs by the sub-region as defined by the United Nations Statistics Division per SSD. That Eastern European part is essentially Belarus, Bulgaria, Czechia, Hungary, Poland, Republic of Moldova, Romania, Russian Federation, Slovakia, and Ukraine, to an aggregate of 3,908 LRRs. Also, per the same UNSD definitions, this graph includes part of Asia, meaning Middle East, as well as Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan. And the aggregate for the part of Asia is 2,047. This brings us the initial outreach issue. So around 20% of the RIPE NCC membership budget comes from LRRs from outside the European Union, Western and Central Europe. But back several years ago, several decades ago, most of the community efforts and the NCC efforts were largely skewed towards the West. And I'm not kind of ready to say that this situation has changed a lot, because previous 5 non-virtual RIPE meetings were held in Germany, Netherlands, Iceland, Netherlands, and France. The back 10 years, 12 years ago, the NCC board and the external communications team recognized that distance in outreach, and they had a few proposals. One of those being some attempts to minimize language barriers, have a right policy translated to local languages. I think that didn't go through well. Apart from that, a few regional meetings were founded. The first being ECE, and I hear that that's a very successful attempt. ENOG, Middle East, as far as I know, also a success, but I'm not an expert. And ENOG, which is basically the scope of the session today. So, a timeline of ENOG. It was officially announced in 2010, the first meeting held half a year after. And initially, as most of the ENOG community members reported at that time, including former Programa Committee chairs, so initially things were going as expected. Some would say there were some tensions in the community even at that point. I participated in ENOG 3 in Odessa, ENOG 4 Moscow, ENOG 6 Kiev. And as far as I remember, I can confirm that there were indeed some conflicts on a personal level between some community members as well as Programa Committee members, but generally the ENOG initiative was developing well, with one exception. It was expected to make the Eurasian community involved in the RIPE and ICANN policy development process. But by 2014, the only operational part of ENOG was holding meetings. Nevertheless, the Programa Committee and all the parties involved viewed this as deferred success and were expecting the real success to come. Then 2014 came, and after Crimea, the ENOG meeting in June was held in Moscow, and it was entirely boycotted by the Ukrainian Internet community. Next, ENOG 8 in September 2014 was initially expected to take place in Odessa, Ukraine, but got rescheduled to Baku, Azerbaijan, with just over 100 people finally attending. And initially it was seen by some as just the Ukrainian community parting ways. But after what I believe was a year of negotiations, an ENOG meeting was finally held in Ukraine, Odessa. 184 attendees, an all-time low for the ENOG meetings in Ukraine. And that one now was basically boycotted by Russians, with just 11 attendees from Russia and not even all the Programa Committee members attending. From that point on, the ENOG was widely recognized in the region as just a traveling Russian circus. Notably, in 2019, a meeting was held in Tbilisi, Georgia, and all the local internet companies refused to be a host of the meeting because Russia invaded Georgia before and was supporting separatists in Abkhazia and South Ossetia. Over years, ENOG has helped build and support strong faith in internet accessibility in the regional internet communities and the opposition to the internet and information blocking, which is admittedly one fine achievement. However, this ultimately had little to no impact on the regional legislation, with websites in Russia now being blocked basically at will. Then the pandemic began with more issues to the only operational part, which is holding meetings in Russia. And finally, in 2022, a request was issued by the ENOG PC chair at the moment, me, and supported by the vice chair to terminate ENOG as a concept as a trademark. Nearly no objections were raised I think 1 or 2, 3 objections total for meetings that attracted hundreds of people before on a free-to-attend basis. And there are surely much more in the history of this, but I'll leave that to internet historians now. One thing that needs to be mentioned, though, in here is the ENOG Telegram chat, because we had a chat in the Telegram Messenger. It wasn't official. It was built by some community members in their free time, maintained. And it was introduced during one of the later meetings as the alternative to the mailing list, which was absolutely dead. And initially was also viewed as having potential to grow. By February 2022, it had a funny number of participants. So basically it was cursed. And 3 years before, I shared that experience with Max Stucci from ENOG. Don't know if it's here. No, I don't think so. Anyway, Max decided to give it a try in the ENOG and founded the ENOG Telegram chat. Now, ENOG is 1,308 members. And I want to remind you that in terms of the geography, this is the ENOG region, right? And this is Italy. But in terms of RIPE participation, I mean, yeah. And this is the situation as it is up now. Basically, no country of the former ENOG sub-region could be traveled freely for everyone. Missile attacks. Community meetings are the least of our problems because, you know, I'm not just speaking Ukraine because there's also Armenia, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan. We have lots of other problems with LIRs of the region, not the community meetings. It's equipment shortages, it's attacks, it's basically some of them just don't have this, you know, long-term planning. They have short-term planning, and they need probably some other means of support. And speaking of the one of the initial premises of ENOG being introduced, there was a requirement, implicit maybe, to kind of balance the NCC outreach against the geographical distribution of its budget sources. Now, paying the membership fee is now trouble for lots of the LIRs in the region. Some of them basically operating as non-profits and desperately needing money to continue supporting internet in the bombed areas. Others being potentially unable to pay their fees because of banking and financial system sanctions by the EU and counter sanctions by their own governments. The RIPE NCC has already stated that they would not seize number resources when a member is unable to pay their fees on time, strictly because of the 2 reasons outlined. The payments are being postponed. When and how the situation changes is not predictable. Therefore, there is something that the RIPE community needs to decide on. And there are short-term and long-term decisions. Short-term, for instance, like I said before, the NCC has postponed membership fees for some of the Russian LIRs. That alone is a good example of actually supporting the regional internet connectivity. Obviously, this may leave us with little to no means to provide other support to Russian LIRs, except for providing tools and general information guidance. Obviously, Ukrainian LIRs should have different assistance requests. Obviously, we have Armenian LIRs who might also be struggling in some ways, and holding meetings might not be a solution. Now, the question to the LIRs of the sub-region: what do you need? What would you want RIPE to do? And secondly, the question to the entire community: what should we instruct the NCC to do with the information that we're about to get? Now, long term, what could the sustainable regional design be and how should we distribute the RIPE NCC forces for the ultimate goal of having the internet connectivity and reachability in all of the parts of this now very problematic region. So this is basically the basis of this discussion, and I just want to move on moderating this. And we already, and please, the queue is open, the mic is open. If you have anything to say, anything to ask, anything to discuss, please, it's right now, it's the right time to do it. And we have the first participant in the queue. It is, please say your name and affiliation, and please.
Yes. Hello, my name is Alexander and I'm a member of ENOG community and ENOG program committee. I would like to add few points to Töma's presentation. First of all, we should split RIPE NCC and RIPE as community. As far as RIPE NCC funds meeting, I remember that one of the main meanings of ENOG communities was to increase engagement of people from this region into community activities. Unfortunately, we see a bit of decline of this. The second point, currently, to be fair, ENOG have been created to bring RIPE community values into region which is not actively participating in RIPE activities. And unfortunately, it was not so successful. For example, ENOG was created for regions which have visa restrictions to attend RIPE meetings in Western Europe. Such restrictions are still exist, but they, for example, was exist for Ukraine. But for some other countries, including Russia and Central Asia and South Caucasus, they still exist. So it's still needed to have something where people from these regions could meet even more freely and well try to join European values, especially in the sanctions times, when the flights of European companies over Russian territory have been stopped, and Moscow was one of the main hubs for Central Asian countries towards Europe. That's really important. And my last point about canceling ENOG as a concept. Unfortunately, I can witness that all these cancellation requests was sourced from people who was in ENOG community, but at the moment of request, they was already outside of ENOG territory. Like Töma is already Cyprus resident. And for example, Dmitry Kokhmanyuk is also resides not in this region. Also, some request was followed by a letter by Mr. Nabok, who requested to remove all resources from internet resources from Russia. And when RIPE NCC and ICANN have declined this request, we've seen some other authors, co-authors of Nabok's request, again, like Mr. Kokhmanyuk, requesting cancellation of ENOG as a concept. So I would like to suggest not to take in consideration any opinion from people who was in ENOG, successfully exit this territory, have access to European values and RIPE community values freely, but requesting other people who do not such free access, not to have it access any further. Thank you very much. Hope to join discussion later.
Thank you, Alexander. Really nothing to add to what Alexander said, by the way. And like that was what I was starting this with. I prefer not to express my own opinion in here. Yeah, partly because, yeah, maybe I'm not considered a part of this region anymore. Right, lots of things already. Oh, yeah, go, please. Dmitry, please state your name and affiliation, and please. No. Is it the affiliation part that got the participant out of the queue? I don't know. Hopefully not.
Hi.
Welcome.
I'm Shahin Ghairi from ENOG. We had ENOG and we run ENOG, and it is the same as ENOG. I think in 2017 we ran ENOG, and we had our first meeting, and I appreciated the ENOG because of the strong PC team and also the materials, the technical materials. I like, and I enjoyed. I think I participated two of the meetings. And the Telegram group number is not that important number, because in ENOG I think we were the first like that we ran the Telegram channel, Telegram group. And when we were at 1,000, we prevented people to join because it was increasing, and there were a lot of people that wanted joining, but they were not related to the ENOG, or they were not a lawyer, or they were just the normal users. And we couldn't make another ENOG because there is no internet in Iran, so it's the same as ENOG. So I have these questions about ENOG as well. Thank you.
Thank you for your experience. So I just kind of wanted to reiterate the thank you. Just kind of wanted to reiterate the context of this BoF meeting, because a lot of people just joined. So what we're speaking of is we have that former ENOG subregion, and the RIPE NCC used to provide support for LIRs in the regions with trainings, meetings, outreach. Probably for some of them, most of them, I don't know, meetings are not a solution anymore. It's not essentially a help. And some of them are just living short term with budget constraints. And the first question is, for the LIRs of the region, what do you need? The second question is, what kind of the support to the LIRs is something that the NCC is willing to provide? Yeah, please.
A question from the audience. Dmitry Serbulov from Dmitry Ant is asking, first graph. Can you move this?
I will.
The number of layers. Is this the total number with multi-layers or just companies?
Wait, please wait. I should have made less slides. That one, right?
I believe this.
Yeah. This is the aggregate number of LIRs as reported by the RIPE NCC statistics page on the website. So presumably, what's the question again?
Multi-LIRs or kind of members, unique members?
I believe just LIRs, yes.
So the answer is multi.
Yeah, the answer is multi.
Thanks.
Now thinking of, yes, it's definitely this.
Hans-Petter Holen, RIPE NCC. So to provide clarity in that, you see there is 23,000-ish LIRs, and we have around 20,000 members. So there are 3,000 in between. So we have started to report on both in most of our material, but you can find some statistics that just have LIRs. So 20,000 members and 23,000-ish LIRs.
Thank you. Yeah, go.
More from Dmitry. Let's stop talking about the Ukrainian and Russian conflict for a moment, and let's talk about the real problem, the cessation of the circulation of the euro for 2-3 years and the collapse of European Union. It sounds crazy, but it's already practically taken place. Moreover, it's possible that connectivity in Europe will be far from what we are used to. Against the background, I would think about how the internet community will be reassembled in 3-5 years. In my opinion, the most dangerous for the community will be the various methods of traffic encryption.
All right. I think having to respond to that one, the European Union, as of now, is out of scope of this because none of the countries in the ENOG, former ENOG sub-region, is not a member of European Union as of yet.
Dmytro Kakhmanyuk, one of LRs in the region and PC member, or former PC member. I'm also say, my company hosted 2, at least, of ENOG meetings, and I have at least one participant from Ukraine here who helped to organize RAP and CC days. I guess there's 2 things. One is that what is this region thing, right? Because say Germany isn't in the region, just in the right. And some of them, let's say, okay, there is a MINOG countries, ENOG countries, SC countries, and other countries. And so I guess I see the 2 things, right? If a country isn't part of the EU, isn't developed enough, it must be in some group of less developed countries so it can kind of learn, it's like almost like colonial aspect, right? The bigger countries are good to go by their own. Okay, maybe I'm kind of being sarcastic here, but my point is that, yeah, we can actually see, right, the countries, wait, it's too many slides for you, but the list of countries may be there somewhere or not. So some of those countries may not want to be part of the region, to be part of the RIPE effort, right? Just like after this, you'll have Kazakhstan meeting, which is organized by RIPE and CC, co-organized. I forgot where, Astana or, yeah, Almaty, right? And so, like I said, Kyiv had its own RIPE and CC days, other cities had, like in Tbilisi, we had one. So I guess to have a regional meeting kind of helps to, periodically go to other countries in a certain group, but group had over 10 countries. We had just under 20 meetings, am I right? I had made the slide of that a long time ago.
Yeah.
And so it was never distributed. One of these RIPE employees, I think he's a former RIPE employee, said, Dmitry, Dima, we just have to go to Moscow every other year because, Moscow is more important. So I think this is not a good strategy. So if you're going to have a group of, say, 10 countries, whatever those countries would be, and we can see SC, for example. I see pretty good rotation. I don't think that SC repeats cities that much. So that can make sense. Or likewise, MINOG is small enough groups, so right, it's like what, 5 or 6 countries. I think that if we make a group of small number of countries that generally are somehow connected network-wise, culture-wise, economical-wise, it can make sense. If say Ukraine is EU candidate, or say Georgia is, or say, I don't know, some other country is, should they be conflated because of that or because of geography? It doesn't make sense to me. I think the idea of grouping should be revisited, and we should maybe just consider more RIPE regional efforts in those countries in the region that are ready to have that effort in that country. It may be simpler. You can also run those in parallel, right? Because then you have like 3 events maybe in the same year in different cities. Ideally, right? It works. because ENOG used to be twice per year, then it got cut to once per year. So I just think it will be better just to focus on individual countries, members' needs, and don't think of these groupings, unless these groupings do exist already. Like the EUNOG for European Union members of the RIPE NCC, maybe? Any thinks it's a good idea? Why we don't have one?
Just one clarification, if I may. Are you speaking short term or long term?
That's it.
Okay.
It's like, oh, okay, I mean, I'm thinking of, oh, you mean strategy? Yeah, I think it's long-term strategy. As somebody just heard EU is going to collapse. Well, I hope not. Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, Daniel Kahnberg, a long-term RIPE member and RIPE NCC staff. I want to give a little bit of history, and I think the end of what Dimitri just said is the important thing. It's not so important, or let me give the history first. The reason the ENOG and so on things happened from my memory, and I'm old and it's not the best, was that we found that we had this RIPE region, and there was certainly a big bias among the membership who would attend RIPE meetings, speak English, be comfortable, get visas, and all that kind of thing could fully participate. And we thought it was wrongly biased, because the people who could not do all this were not equal in participating. So what we did is we went and tried to organize meetings more regionally. And it was very pragmatic. We were thinking sort of, where are they speaking the same language? Where is the possibility to, or similar languages, you know, where can they travel easily? Where do they feel comfortable, and all that? And I don't want to bore you with the history of all the different regional groups, but the specific ENOG one was actually a little bit strange for us, because it happened, and I'll be quite frank about this, in my memory, out of the requests from mainly Russia. And this was how long ago? You had it 20 years ago.
2010.
Yeah,
that was.
or 2010. Yeah. So 12 years ago. No, we had. Well, I think maybe we had regional meetings first, and then ENOG got established. And the strange thing for us was that a lot of the Russian people said, you should come here because there's a neutral ground where everybody can attend. And it's not being biased towards one particular group of local people and another group of local people. That was, and I see other people have the same memory, so, and the same hair color. So, and so we were in a strange situation where we were sort of the host from outside who provided the neutral ground. And the intention was that people could talk to each other and could participate in RIPE on an equal footing, and there was certainly some input into, for instance, address policy that came out of the discussions there that we brought into the address policy working group, and we could say, and some of our Russian friends could come there and say, we discussed this among ourselves, and this is sort of what we want. The other thing, of course, was information dissemination. It was basically training and all that kind of thing. And I think, as an old idealist, I think it's not so important to discuss the conflicts. It's not so important to discuss who belongs and who doesn't. and why there is no European Union NOG. I mean, I think from the history it's quite clear. But it's basically what do you want, what do you need, how can we continue to do the information dissemination, and how can we continue to help your region, ISPs, technicians, the community to participate fully in RIPE. And I think that we should look forward and make a constructive discussion how we do that. But as the idealist in myself, I would really like you guys to develop a system or form that has reconciliation and bringing the people who are now in conflict together again in some future at some future time as one of the design criteria. I vividly remember now standing in Belgrade. I vividly remember the beginning of the 90s, and we heard in the plenary some very Serbian-centric discussion about this. But I remember vividly that we were starting the NCC and we had staff from the region, and they were all hugging each other, and we were helping without the regional meetings and so on to keep connectivity, to keep the stuff going. And I think if you think about what you want from the NCC, how you want to organize yourselves, do it now pragmatically so that you can participate, that you can get the information, that you are part of the community, and make the long-term plan that you will be together again. Thank you.
Thank do it the way you want.
Thank you very much. Oksana Prihodko, European Media Platform. I would like to add some words from users' perspective. I am newcomer at RIPE meeting, but I participated in some ENOG meeting, and I would like to say that all regional dialogues have to be built on trust. Trust is in our region is bombed, unfortunately. Just now, Ukrainians do not visa to come to European region, but we have to spend 30-40 hours under bombing to come to Belgrade. But I think that a real dialogue just now is impossible in our region. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, there was a proposal of having this BoF session in Berlin, and it got postponed to Belgrade because we thought that, you know, Ukrainians couldn't travel, and Russians couldn't travel to Germany, and Armenians and other countries also had some restrictions. And so we postponed this to Belgrade because Belgrade is much more accessible to countries of the region, but some of the issues didn't got resolved by this time. You will be the next. I'm pointing at you.
There is also one people in the no more in the queue. No, he's Alexander Savnin, ENOG PC, to Daniel and Hans-Peter and Miriam. So when RIPE meeting will come to any of ENOG countries?
And are you going to answer that one? Or no? I was about to give some time for thoughts, but
well, an easy answer would be, of course, where we have a good host, and a host that is committed to have the RIPE community and the countries, you know, in the RIPE community. Well, basically, it's an international meeting, and we're always dependent on a good host, like we have here in Belgrade now. That would be my official answer to that. And of course, the community needs to also want to come.
So the next order is you, then the participant in the queue, Dmitry, and then the questions from the chat. Okay.
Yeah.
Hisham Ibrahim, RIPE NCC. I'm the Chief Community Officer. Just to touch on a few things that were already mentioned. Daniel already talked a little bit about the history and we saw the numbers. And if you think back around 12 years ago, this was at the time the RIPE NCC membership, the number of LIRs, the budget that we had was a lot smaller than what we have today, right? Which made sense that we had to think about which events we can actually organize, how much travel we can do, and how to group the different communities. And Daniel gave examples of the thinking there when it came to like stuff like language, ease of access, and such. Now, the picture over a decade later is a little bit different. We do have the budget, we do have the means. We've seen a lot more national NOGs emerging in our service region, which we support. So and in fact, what we're seeing is that the more effective approach isn't to group a bunch of countries that share borders or share a language or maybe some complicated history. What really makes a difference is us to understand on a national level what the needs are and address them and work on them, which is the approach that we're taking and the approach that we're encouraging. Now, does that mean there's no room for regional engagement? No, but the national is taking over and is more effective and is more direct. We have an example of that. We just had the RIPE NCC days in Uzbekistan. Thank you, because I'm thinking Kazakhstan for the next one. Uzbekistan, right? And we went there and we talked about exactly what they needed to talk about, the issues that related to them. We gave examples from their country. We worked with them on partnerships. We talked about ways forward. That wasn't a general, you're one of the slides amongst 10 other slides that we're showing about a whole region. It was all about them. And they did feel the love, they did feel the appreciation, they did feel that this was a community, right? Now, going to regional meetings, and we have another one, that's what I was thinking of, Kazakhstan in 2 weeks' time. We have a regional meeting there that we're calling the Central Asia Peering Forum. Now, that came out of a need, again, identifying what the needs are and seeing if there's commonality, right? So the stand countries, the Central Asian countries, are all landlocked countries, right? And if you look at the geography and you look at the geopolitics today with sanctions and with garden walls all around them, they're in a unique situation where they do need more effort in terms of interconnection and connectivity and peering, which is why that was designed for them. And they do share common languages, that makes it easier. They do share visa-free access, which makes it easier, which also encourages us to say, Iran also has visa-free access to those countries. And while it's technically not a Central Asian country, and while it technically doesn't speak the languages there, but Farsi is spoken in Tajikistan, it does make sense that we actually bring these countries together until, of course, they reach a certain level of maturity, and then they have their own stuff as well, which is what we would like to see and encourage. Now, the definition that we have at the RIPE NCC, and I'm almost done, is for a successful regional event, is that we would like to see 80% of the countries that are targeted for that activity represented by double digits from each country. So there was an example of MENOG, right? So MENOG is roughly 10 countries. So we expect to see 8 countries represented with at least double digits. And MENOG passes that litmus test. There was talk about SEE. SEE, this part of the world, also had around, also around 10. So we'd like to see at least 8 countries represented with double digits. SEE meetings pass that litmus test. From what Töma was talking about, and we saw the same numbers, even before the war, even before any of that, we didn't see it passing that litmus test. We weren't seeing double digits represented from at least 80% of what was considered to be the region. And that's the difference between that consideration. Hopefully, and again, I was talking about the Central Asia Peering Forum one, looking at the registration, and the proof is in the pudding in 2 weeks' time, we are seeing that kind of representation from what we see as a region that makes sense to come together. Thanks.
Thank you for this insight. Dmitry in the queue, please speak.
Can you hear me?
Now, yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry for my English, so I will try to say what I want to say. I can see the two different problems, short time and long time. Short time is how meeting now, how to take money from leaders, how to decide some sanctions problems, and so we can see that we now do it. Near time, we will see how it will be more and more difficult to decide this problem because they will be grown. And it's easy to decide where to meet. It's many countries like Turkey, Armenian, so Georgia. It's neutral country, so it's good for tourists. We can meet where if we need. And I say, I want to say the main thing that I'm online with you, so it's needed to make it more easy and more comfortable to work online. So it will be no problem. The problem will be with money because it's next year. I do not understand how Ripen CC will work really. We must think about this. It will be like in Russia in Soviet Union died. It will be very, very difficult time for all. The last will be looks like countries borders will change. So it's now too difficult to say how it will looks regionals of internet. But I say again, it's needed to store connectivity between countries. I think I wrote it. It's the most dangerous things that we do before. We do not understand what we do. It's some kind of traffic encryption and some service encryption. Now we have some centers where the certificates stored. The next situation will be nationalizations of these certificates. So some services that work in this space of encryption will stop work at all. And we must be ready to return to the first type of protocols with which is not encryption. It looks it's talking about some crazy things, but it will be need to do, and will be need to ready to do it. So the next time it will be looks like the money transaction will be very, very problems because unfortunately I need to say it again and again, wherever euro will be died. It's impossible to store it. If we are real people who live in real world, we must look at this. And I don't know what will like dollars for sometimes, or it's China yen, or it's maybe rubles, but it will be need things today about the next time. And the last thing that I want to say for my looks, it looks like internet stay government controlled, and the problems of resources which now controlled by tribe and CC, it will be maybe changed to the some international government community like MS, Международный союз электросвязи, sorry, International Union of Electricity.
ITU. Yep.
Yeah. So it's what I can say now, and I do not have decision for how to decide these problems, but we must understand it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for speaking. I think I see in the list of participants some people who could comment on the ITU part of this. I don't know if they're going to speak or not. Yeah, please.
Hello, everybody. My name is Olena Kushnira. I'm co-owning director of Ukrainian operator of network. I visit RIPE in the first time because in Ukraine, you know, we have very hard time. I think that ENOG, it's like Soviet Union. And of course, when we today think how to buy diesel generators, how to be in link, how to organize good internet for our people, because they must call to their families. It can be last call in their lives. And of course, now staying here, like the member of internet community, internet, Internet Association of Ukraine. Thank you very much. Of course, I'm very afraid that you don't want to hear us, because for us it is not. It is not. It is impossible in this time to have some dialogues with ENOG, and you must understand it. It is not Soviet Union, and Ukraine, it is a independent country, and we want to be like independent country and visit RIPE, not in different unions, because Ukrainian community want to be independent and don't want to have some influence. You must understand. That's why we stay here, and we want to discuss our problems, because today a lot of engineers in our company died because they must do everything to be in link, to stay our companies in the links. That's why, first of all, I must tell to that person who support Ukraine, who stay with Ukraine, thank you very much. It is very important for us in this very hard time. Thank you.
Thank you. It was always obvious that the area of ENOG was exactly the area of the former Soviet Union. I didn't know, but we just never recognized the elephant in the room. I don't know why. Please repeat that on the mic, please.
The area of ENOG excluded the Baltic states precisely because these are not true Russian lovers countries. I just want to comment on, yeah. And the language part, I just say, I truly understand that people in Georgia, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Ukraine, and I guess Moldova speak the same language, right? No, they don't. They understand the Russian. So ENOG was a consolidation of countries that have some speakers of Russian language. But as being said to Georgia 10 years ago, I was able to converse in Russian. And as my last visit last year, I wasn't. I don't mind that. I'm just saying, indeed, the world changed. We shouldn't say we made a bad decision 10 years ago. No, maybe 10 years it was a good decision. But that decision doesn't work today. Even if the war in Ukraine wouldn't start, it would still not make sense. I'm not having my old presentation on ENOG when ENOG budget was slashed in half and it went, but I made a graph. Somebody could dig it up in archives in NCC community plenary. How did dynamic work for each meeting? But basically, all of these, let's say, Turkic countries, right? Turkic means languages of Turkic family, like Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and others, never had ENOG meeting. When Russia had lots, Belarus had one, Georgia, if I'm not mistaken, had two. I think we had one, Azerbaijan, and so on. So it was never fair. It was never same language. And I guess the good point that Hisham made about double digits. Can Hisham please explain, what do you mean by double digits? Like more than 10%, right? But of what? Like if you have a meeting, then at least 8 countries are represented by 10% or something else. Because that's a good objective criteria, but by that criteria, ENOG totally failed, because the meeting Russia has like 90% Russian participants, the meeting Ukraine had maybe 60% Ukrainian participants, and likewise, maybe that wasn't a failure by itself, but it didn't compare to say SE meetings, to which I went a few times, and to a couple of ENOG meetings where I went 2 times. And even speaking of ENOG, right? They have Iran, Turkey, and let's say Emirates. That's Arabic, Turkish, and Farsi. These are not same languages at all. It just doesn't make sense. It's just as well if you call, ENOG, because they all use Latin alphabet, right? In Serbian, Italian, French, Basque. All right. So yeah, be explained, because I would like criteria that can be formalized and checked. It's easier this way.
So very quickly, because I also know we're pressed on time. So yes, we don't do the attendees in terms of percentages, because again, it varies. But what the expectation is that at least double digits of individuals, so at least 10 or more from 80% of the countries represented would attend, right? So if we have 10 countries, 8 countries have at least 10 or more participants for each. Right, and that's what we're basing to consider to be a success. Right now, again, looking at ENOG's numbers, as you said, a lot of the countries, depending on where it was, would be slashed out of that. And there's something very important here as well, and to the point that was being made about we don't want to be lumped in a certain definition. Right, you can't force a community on anyone. If they don't want to be part of a community, there's nothing that bounds them to be there. And even those regional events, when they were created, they weren't created because you were born in this part of the world, so you have to only engage there. They were meant to be ways to bring the engagement closer, but not to bound you. Shaheen gave a good example that he, from Iran, would go attend ENOG events. And I met a lot of Iranians there because they didn't want to be bound by the definition of the Middle East. They wanted to understand what was happening there. Now, very quickly as well, I want to say something. Ukraine, this year, we did a lot of engagements there. And there is a Ukrainian NOG that is in the mix there. There's a Telegram channel. There's all the activities that are happening there. Again, national focus on getting stuff done. That didn't mean that we also didn't do something in Russia. There is a NOG in Russia, the Balkan NOG, yes. And we support them because it is a technical meeting of people coming together and engaging. We've done the same thing in different parts of the region. So, and that was part of the commitment that I personally made when we said we're going to shift the budget for the ENOG events towards doing more engagement in the region. And guess what? It's more targeted, it's more successful, and it's more meaningful. Thank you.
Thank you. Dmitry, to kind of address your previous remark, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania were never an internationally recognized part of the Soviet Union. So. And we have a question in the chat, I guess.
Right. Anton Verschuren, sorry for my pronunciation. Speaking of himself, I can see the issues with travel visa funding, but I don't think that regional meetings will be a solution long term. They can help in involving people for the first time, but in the end, we want all people to communicate and interact. I don't want to lose talking to people further away in a different region. I want to know their needs too. Why don't we share these burdens and organize regular RIPE meetings more in those regions where we now have low participation?
Thanks for that comment.
Hello, my name is Urban Svodolnik. It's actually my first RIPE meeting, so I'm not affiliated. I don't know a lot about, this will be easier, about the politics inside of RIPE, but I don't know, maybe with the elephant in the room that was mentioned. Yes, it's basically the former USSR NOG. It's the CIS NOG. And well, I will not say how these countries function between themselves, but because I don't know for all of them, I know for some of them, but with its current form, ENOG is dysfunctional. That was the main point. and a lot of points where the communication can be done between these countries. Also, maybe a certain sub-region, a region inside of RIPE, should be a region of countries that have similar problems. And I think, for example, with Ukraine, it's geographically somewhere else, and certainly new lines have been drawn where to Ukraine towards which power bloc it's gravitating. So, well, Ukraine is probably not going to Moscow for ENOG meetings. It's connecting with Europe. It's peering with Europe. It's also not in the current geopolitical situation. It's not a power. It's not part of the Soviet Union. It's not the buffer state anymore. It's becoming part of Europe. Will that be of EU or just Europe? Inside of RIPE, I think it's part of Europe, and that's where the meetings for them are. For other countries, is so in Central Asia, it was mentioned before, they're landlocked countries. I did some research a while back, that's why I'm talking. And well, they're landlocked countries, and people that are from there probably know this, but you have to get internet from somewhere, and countries that are landlocked actually have more expensive IP peering than others, because you need to buy internet. It's a trade good, like it always was. And if you have connection to the international waters, you can connect with everyone. And that means that the same way as the gas situation is probably around the whole world, we know for the European part, internet also has to flow to Central Asia, especially because it's centralized in Europe, also in Russia, but probably not in Central Asia. And also it's not in this part of Europe. You don't have Amazon and so on data centers in Serbia, Bulgaria, so on, or at least the last time I checked. We are importing internet from France, from Frankfurt, because there's where the internet is. So I would say that Central Asian countries, so Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, I hope I did not forget one, and Azerbaijan and Georgia might have similar problems. And that's between themselves to solve. They have more language connections than others that may work. They have borders that they have to work with. But their peering connections are either through Azerbaijan and Georgia towards Europe or any other international link in the international waters, to north to Russia, or to China, or to Iran. And those are, they have to decide by themselves how will they work with this also power blocks geopolitically. So it's also up to them how they interact with Russia. I will say, and I'm not saying this because I would want to say that I have anything against Russia in this topic, but dependency is bad. And for example, neo-real outlook on international politics says that every country is selfish and does things for themselves. Some parts of the world think different, some parts think like that. So they have to decide how they will, as an independent region, how they will connect either towards, well, I will just say either towards north, south, east, or west. So maybe, because I know that the Russian colleagues here are saying it's impossible to go to Europe, it's impossible to talk to this country, to that country, but Russia is very big by itself. It has its own problems and connection experts inside, but maybe Central Asian plus Central Asian countries plus Azerbaijan plus Georgia and Armenia, I forgot about Armenia, should be an independent bloc that decides their policies how to connect. Or when it comes to either if they can connect towards, if we would join them with, we join them with Russia, if we join them with China, or we join them with Europe, those countries are very big and they're hegemonic in how they would work. And yes, I don't think it's even strange that there's mostly Russian people at ENOG because Russia is the biggest. And if you look how things were in Soviet Union, well, you go to the center, you go to Moscow. And maybe those things should be done in the region. Thank you.
To answer the last one, I think that was always a concern, and one of the people from the community that I know, won't say his name, he would do it himself if he wants. He said that basically, the problem with Russia in the middle of any such regional outreach format is the same why like the country like Russia couldn't be a part of European Union at any time, because it's just too big. There's just no fair ways to distribute powers in like a community built like this. That was basically the concern.
I think that's very true. I won't say that this is the this is an isolated example. You know, like we can look at many examples at other international organizations, or maybe more geopolitically, since we do have some politics in here. You know, also it depends if the countries are okay with this possibly dependency in many ways. You know, I come from Slovenia. The European decisions are done by the West European countries without too much of our input, but we are okay with that. And it depends on the countries from that region to decide if they want to make decisions on themselves, or do they want to be dependent a bit on somebody. But it's their decision, you know, like it's a democratic process at the end. But it should be sustained. If there's too much of something, of certain country influence, maybe that should be mitigated in some sort of way.
Thank you. And right. So I believe I should have officially closed the mic like 5 minutes ago, but as long as we have a good discussion, I would propose to extend it for another 10 minutes. Is everything okay? Is everybody okay with this? Yeah, please go there.
Just very quickly, I was going to say in rounding off this discussion, but now you're extending it. No, I really appreciate that you actually bring this. I don't know, standing behind, you know, with my back towards you. I really appreciate that you brought this discussion here, and I see there's a lot of interest, and I think we're having a good discussion here. But kind of as a RIPE chair, I just want to also you know, express that the RIPE community, of course, is, you know, open to anybody, and I really hope that no matter what you decide and what's decided in the to do with the ENOG in the future, or to more regional developments or more national NOGs, which I also see as a good development, the RIPE community is, of course, you know, always open to anybody and to all of you. And we have this, at this meeting, we have participation from 72 countries here, both on site and also online. And I also hope that the online participation facilities that the RIPE NCC is providing for these meetings really help also more participation from countries that maybe cannot travel to certain countries that the RIPE meeting takes place. So I just wanted to stress this, that the RIPE meeting, the RIPE community and RIPE family, if you will, you know, is open to everybody, and depending on countries. And we have certain technical work that we're doing here at the RIPE community, and that's important that as many people participate as possible.
Thank you. Now to the RIPE PC, obviously, the reason why this is not a talk by both of the session is because we don't have any obvious answers, and maybe we don't have any easy questions as well. So yeah, this is something for the community to decide. Daniel, I think I would. No. Okay. Okay. Good. Right. Right, so the queue is finally empty. We don't have anything in the chat, do we? No. Thank you all for participating, and thank you for being actively part of this, and see you forward at the dinner.